You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike Tusaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again to commence our broadcast week here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. Yes, it is time for the Option Block, the bi-weekly extravaganza that commences our broadcast week here. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-compelling, ever-fascinating Options Insider Radio Network. Reminding you, of course, a couple of things. First off, if you like what you hear, do keep rating and reviewing it. However you get this content, whatever platform you're listening on, if you're one of the many on-demand listeners, do keep rating and reviewing it if your platform allows it. If not, you can always go to the App Store, review our app there. That always, a lot of people like to do that too. So whichever way floats your boats, because it does help new people continue to discover the content out there. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you want to join us for exclusive great pro Q&As at Tony Saliba in the hot seat last week at Great Options Oddities. Every Friday, of course, pro podcast feed, exclusive access to that for you folks, exclusive access to the live streams for this and every other show we do throughout the week, as well as exclusive giveaways. People keep wanting those pro trading crates, even the Rock Lobster. And I keep telling them, nope, those are for our pro members only. So where do you go to get access to all that good stuff to kick down the door and get past the velvet rope, if you will? theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to begin your journey to the dark side. And speaking of dark side, it is that time, listeners. It is my favorite holiday of the year. It is the spooky season. It is Halloween. We commence our broadcast week here on the Option Block, listeners, by guessing that 80s wrestler. So we thought we have to go spooky for today. We got to get a good spooky gimmick wrestler. And when you think of spooky gimmicks, there's a bunch out there that are kind of middling, and there is one that stands head and shoulders above the rest. And technically, not exactly an 80s WWF wrestler. He did wrestle in the 80s, but he made his WWF debut right after the 80s. He came in 1990, so he just missed it. But his debut, he was in there. I just saw it this morning. He was in there with Jim the Anvil and Ted DiBiase and all these guys. So he was in there with some 80s iconic wrestling. He had some feuds with these guys and ran forever, even though he's more known as more of like an Attitude Era, early 2000s guy. But he did debut around that time, and he was active in the 80s, so he counts. One of the best gimmicks of all time, and one of the most iconic spooky gimmicks of all time. Can you guess this pretty much 80s and iconic spooky wrestler? That's a fun one. I can let that go for a bit. It's fun. It's also in keeping with his entrance, which is quite slow. It takes about 20 minutes to get down to the ring. And now let me welcome on, by the way, one of our usual two competitors, the uncleist of Mike's, Mr. Uncle Mike Tusoff from St. Charles Wealth Management, unable to play today. So he will not have his tilt at the windmill. I got a feeling when he hears this episode, he's going to be upset because this is a good one. And it's also one, if you've been around wrestling for the last 3 decades, you should know who this guy is. Let me now toss it down to the Southern Volatility Mecca, known as Austin, where we are joined for spooky season by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, A, welcome back to the program, and B, can you name this most iconic of spooky gimmicks?
I sure can. I believe that was from the Skyscrapers, Mean Mark Callis.
Yes, exactly. It was Mr. Mean Mark Callis, which that's what he was in the 80s. He was an 80s wrestler. He was just Mean Mark Callis, right?
Yes. In the Skyscrapers, I believe it was. It was him, and he replaced, I want to say, Sid Vicious, didn't he, in that group?
I know he was told in that promotion that you will never make money as like a professional wrestler, so you should probably just put it aside.
Which is insane.
And then he goes on to become like one of the biggest names of all time. So yes, The Undertaker, one of the few bits of this music I've never actually heard live. I heard a bunch of other guys. I've heard Warriors music live when he came out. I've seen Hogan. I saw Andre. I never got the chance to see Taker. Even he went for like 30 years. I just never got a chance to see his music. Never heard the bells live. People go nuts. Second that bell goes off, people just lose their minds. For whatever reason, I never crossed paths with Taker in the live fun stuff. As we cross paths with the market, it is time for the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
Yeah, our chat wise folks that they were on it. Option Queen, she got it. She isn't even that big on the wrestling. She got it. Frankie got it. But yeah, a lot of people got it. So yeah, good to see our chat on the ball as usual. Let's get out to what's lighting things up out there today. And I guess maybe in keeping with spooky season, we are seeing a little bit of blood red on the old screen after just an epic rally for the last few sessions and closing in on, at least for the Dow and a few indices, the best October they've ever had. October not known to be a rally home month all the time, so that's probably plays into that a little bit. But intriguing stuff. You look at just solely through the lens of the Dow, it's on the track for its best month since 1976. So that's saying something out there, even though today they are giving some of that back for this nigh on historic month. S&P, as we're kicking off the show, off about 0.7%, a little north of 2/3, actually just ticked 0.7. The Dow off a little bit less than 0.5%, about 0.4%, and the NASDAQ off about a full percent. That means our vol friends, they're still coming in a little bit, listeners. Remember, we were at some pretty lofty air not too long ago, so it takes a lot to really maintain that. VIX, when we kicked off the show, was shy of 26.5. It was about 26.35, down about 0.7 point from where it was on Thursday's show. VVIX, so the vol at about a 78. So again, getting pretty low down there, listeners. That's down 3 points. VXX was at about a 1780. That puts it down about 0.5 point from where it was this time last week. And UVXY just shy of 10, 990 when we kicked off the show, also down 0.5 point. SVIX, obviously our inverse friend, that's at a 12. That's up about 1/3 point. UVIX 9 3/4, down about 3/4 point. And VolQ, aka the at the money vol of the NASDAQ, at about a 31, even when we kicked off the show, down a little over a point, about 1.25 points. So, Mr. Meatball, a lot to unpack there. First, you mentioned Mean Mark Callis. Easy for me to say. You mentioned Mean Mark Callis. If you have any enduring memories of The Undertaker, he did overlap with a lot of great 80s wrestlers. He was in there with all of them. People forget that. And then, if you have time, sir, what's catching your eye in these blood red markets?
I think the funny story is Hulk Hogan faking the neck injury from after Taker beat him in WrestleMania, which was absolutely ridiculous. And I just liked him as a wrestler. I thought he was great. Didn't love it when he did the biker turn. I thought that was a little meh.
You didn't like American Badass Biker Taker?
No, I did not. The long ride, no thanks. Stick to the tombstone there, Taker. So those are my enduring memories. Just a great wrestler. Obviously, it's hard to think of him without thinking of Cactus Jack going, or maybe it was Mankind going through the cage.
Oh, that original like Hell in the Cell one, yeah.
Yeah, just one of the craziest moments I've ever seen in my life. And the way those guys handled it was absolutely incredible. But yeah, there's the taker for you.
And Wes, lighten up your tape, sir, in these blood red spooky season markets, sir.
Yeah, well, we're down 27 after a big boom of a day on Friday. Markets ripped higher, mostly on the back of Apple. Apple's down about $2 right now. A little bit of a fade after probably a little too much. We still see all the mega caps leading us lower. With Amazon down and Google is down and Microsoft is down. So all those mega caps still look a little soft. We're seeing some bearish paper in Apple. I'm surprised at the price action of some of the Brazilian stocks with the leftists winning. You got companies like New Holdings up, you got Valley up, PBR down. It's kind of all over the place. What is happening in Brazil? I think that's interesting. I'm watching NKLA. I don't know if you saw those calls. Are we going to talk about those today, Mark?
If you want, I was going to save them for that block. If you want to dive into that kind of stuff now, we can.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, so a trader stepped in and swooped up. Well, we can talk about an odd block. I just want to make sure we're going to talk about him. So I'll tease it. Trader swept in and did something really eye-opening and eyebrow-raising in NKLA, and it has worked so far. How about that for a tease? You're going to need to listen to the rest of the show.
It's like you've been on the show before or something. I like it.
The Russell 2000 keeps trying to go green, while the NASDAQ has recovered a little bit. I'm very interested to see what ends up happening with this market. Are we gonna tank at the end of the day, or are they gonna try and buy this? It's been really indecisive. We've been stuck around 25 to 30 points all day, nay a few minutes when we were maybe down 15, and nay a few minutes when we threatened 40. So I'm very interested to see what price action continues for the rest of the day. Oil stocks outside of PBR are all higher, and we got a lot more earnings coming up this week that I think will make things interesting. Good week to be a trader.
It is indeed. We're going to get to all that earnings juice in a little bit. First, let's break down some other. Actually, you mentioned earnings. Let's just dive right into that fun right now, because we are kind of in the midst of all that goodness. We were hitting on a bunch of these last week. In fact, we had Mr. Matt, the keeper of the earnings data for us over there at Orax, on the network twice last week. So you got a double dose of earnings fun last week. So check out the advisor's option while you listen to on-demand listeners. Then, of course, check out Volatility Views. He was there on Friday as well, kind of breaking down all the madness that is going on out there in earnings season. And as he's been crunching the numbers for a long time. We've been crunching the numbers together since before the pandemic. And in the onset of the pandemic era, we saw earnings vol kind of really get just the blood was squeezed from the stone. It really didn't matter that much anymore. And in the last few cycles, we started to see that change. We started to see the worm turn. So he's looking forward to an action-packed cycle, and we're getting that right now. In fact, I'll get to that in a second. Let's pay off some of the names that are popping off for us right now this week, listeners. After a hot week last week, had some names you may have heard of, like Amazon and Meta and the fruit company popping off last week. It continues this week. Tomorrow we've got Uber, we got Pfizer, we got BP, we got Toyota, AMD, one of our frequent offenders on the chip side and the most actives. EA, Electronic Arts on the gaming side. Canada Goose. How many times are we talking about people selling freaking puts in this name? Canada Goose popping up on Tuesday. Wednesday, we got CBS, Paramount, Cedar Fair. So they own a lot of those amusement parks out there. Roku, Qualcomm, and Robinhood. See what's going on in the millennial Gen Z brokerage front. Thursday, we got Moderna, Crocs. They have the infamous rubber shoes. Peloton. See what's going on in the ongoing dumpster fire that is Peloton. If you're a Peloton devotee, I don't want to offend you. So I know you're out there. I've heard from some of you. So maybe you love it. Hit me up. Tell me why you love Peloton so much. PayPal, Coinbase, Starbucks, Square, and DoorDash. Friday, we've got DraftKings, the Duke Energy, a.k.a. the Duck, DUK, and good old Hershey's. Lucky for you folks, listeners, They know you folks like it. So hot off the presses, right as we started the show, we just got in the earnings move results, earnings season, and earnings trades reports out there. So you can break down a couple for those for you really quickly right now. Let's get out some of the earnings move results reports. If you're not familiar with the vernacular, listeners, these are the reports for the names that are popping off right now, kind of as we speak. So right before the bell this morning, and we got a few popping off, including go out to the semi space. We talked about ON Semiconductor before, ticker symbol ON, ON. They popped off before the bell this morning. They were going into their announcement at $67.48. They were pricing in 7.5%, and they actually delivered 5.2%, even though that was when this report was run about, I'd say about half an hour, 45 minutes ago, maybe an hour ago. And because it's off nearly 7% now. So this, again, it's frame of reference, listeners. The longer you hold on to these positions, the different type of return you're going to have. And we take the snapshot right after the earnings announcement to see kind of exactly what the earnings crush is going to be. In fact, it looks like a lot of red in terms of expected versus vol delivered this morning. Let's pull up a couple other of these really quickly. Let's go out to Expo. We talked about these ones before. This is Expo Logistics, ticker symbol XPO. Obviously, the logistics space, a very volatile one since the onset of the pandemic, ticker symbol XPO. They went into their announcement 50 2/3. They were pricing in 6.3%. They delivered, 0.7%. So they completely screwed the pooch from a vol perspective. Of course, if you were blasting away a premium, that might be exciting to you. They have moved a little bit more since then. They're actually up about 2.5%, about $1.25 right now. But still, dramatic underperformance there. Looks like the strongest outperformance we've seen so far on the names popping off today is Howmet Aerospace Inc., ticker symbol HWM. They make jet engines based out of Pittsburgh. Ticker symbol again, HWM. They went into their announcement 36.17. They're pricing in 3%. They delivered 3.6%, and they're actually down about 2.6% now. So they actually outperformed a wee bit, and now they've kind of given some of that up. But intriguing stuff out there, how these names have evolved. Let's get on out to the names that are popping off this week. Again, these are the earnings move reports, listeners. So the earnings move results, those are the ones that are popping off right now as we speak. Instantaneous results. Then if you want to go a little bit farther out, see what's coming up throughout the next week or two, that's what the earnings reports are for. That's going to tell you exactly. I know it's a little confusing, but that's going to tell you what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So this is what's coming in the future, what they're pricing in, what they're expecting, and what they've done in the past. I'll give you some frame of reference. Let's go out to Uber. Uber popping off on the 1st. So tomorrow, they were at 27.5 when they ran these numbers. They were pricing in $2.86, and in the past they've moved $2.11. So a fair amount of extra juice. And maybe that's warranted because Uber's already down about half a buck since we ran this report, trading right around 27 right now. So Uber, obviously a big bellwether for what's going on out there in the sharing economy out there. So intriguing stuff. We mentioned the gaming side. Let's talk about that one really quickly as well. This is, of course, not the gambling gaming, but the video gaming, Electronic Arts. They're on tomorrow after the bell as well. 128.25 is where they were trading going into this report. They were pricing in $6.83, which is pretty rich because in the past they've moved $4.45. So interesting. They're also off about $1.75 from where they were when we ran this report. So they're trading shy of 126.5 now. So they've moved quite a bit just in the last hour and change. So maybe some of that juice, that extra juice, is a wee bit merited out there. Intriguing. Let's go out to your corner pharmacy. We'll see what kind of vol they've got. This CVS, they're on the 2nd before the bell, listeners. They're trading $94.20 when we ran these numbers. They're pricing in $3.96. In the past, they've moved $3.77. And let's see, they've popped up about $1.20. So names are all over the place today, which is kind of interesting. Up $1, down $2 just since we ran these numbers. So it's one of those days, listeners. You don't like what's going on, just wait 5 minutes and look somewhere else. And you'll have some interesting fun. Speaking of fun, let's go out to Cedar Fair. You mentioned them, ticker symbol FUN out there as well. They, of course, own a lot of the amusement parks probably in your area. They're trading $41 when we ran these numbers, 41 exactly. They're pricing in, my goodness, $2.83. In the past, they've moved 82 cents. That is a heck of a lot of extra juice for Cedar Fair. They've moved about 30 cents since we ran these numbers. They're trading $41.30 right now. Wow. I'm not sure what's on the docket. I mean, obviously, it's been a challenging time for in-person entertainment like amusement parks the last couple of years, but perhaps they're foreseeing a little bit more turbulent waters. Maybe all these, inflation impacts everybody. Maybe it's driving up costs. I know it's hard to get workers just going to our local Six Flags here in Chicago. It seems pretty short-staffed, so it's hard to get people working those types of jobs these days when they can get $20 an hour to go do a lot of things right now. So maybe that's part of the problem as well. Either way, interesting. So they're pricing in a lot of juice in Cedar Fair. And you know who's looking for not a lot of juice? It's whoever's been out there blasting away at these freaking puts in Canada Goose. We've been talking about these things forever. We'll probably talk about them again soon. Canada Goose before the bell on the 2nd. $17.40 was where they were when they ran this reports not too long ago, listeners. All these names have moved tremendously since then. This is crazy. $17.40 is where it was when we ran these numbers. They're pricing in $2.01. In the past, they've moved to $1.88, so a little bit of extra juice, but nothing outlandish. And the stock has now dropped almost 90 cents. So trading 16 and about a half right now. So Canada Goose falling out of bed right now, off nearly 5% just since we ran this report. So wow. A lot of movement out there this morning. I mentioned Robinhood. We played around with them before in oddities quite a few times. Let's talk about them now, see what's going on. $11.50. Man, they are looking rich compared to where they were not too long ago out there, listeners. They were pricing in $1.09. In the past, they've moved to $1.03. So their straddle is pricing in nothing untoward or out of the ordinary at all, which is no fun at all, even though they have rallied a bit since then. So Canada Goose getting annihilated. Robinhood rallying a quarter right now. They're trading $11.76. So it's one of those weird bifurcated days, listeners. We'll hit a few more, then we'll get out to some of the other goodness we got going on. Let's go out to Qualcomm, another frequent offender on our top 10s and most actives. And ticker symbol, of course, QCOM. Trading $119 and about a quarter when we ran this report. They were pricing in $8.67. In the past, they've moved $8.55. So about in line with their previous announcements in the past, even though they have sold off. They're trading about a little bit shy of 118 right now. So they sold off about $1.25 just since we ran this number as well. So things are moving ever since we ran these numbers. And in all directions, which again is kind of unusual. I lie. Let's do a couple more because these are fun. Again, we do tickers for days, listeners. You guys can find all these for yourselves completely for free because we like you. If there's a name you're interested in, chances are it's on one of these reports. So we'd like to give you guys an embarrassment of riches. I defy you to find somewhere else that gives you this much usable data for free. All right, Roku. Let's see. Ticker ROKU, trading 54 double when we ran these numbers. They were pricing in $8.75. In the past, they moved $5.59. So Roku has been an active name for a while there. Early pandemic, it was one of the most volatile names. It was a frequent offender on our most actives. It was kind of weird to me because it wasn't a name that leapt off the top of your mind when you think of very volatile names, yet Roku was extremely volatile. And then it kind of fell off coming into 2021, and we haven't really seen it that much in the top 10s ever since. But it is moving today, at least, or pricing in a lot of juice, I should say, pricing in over $3 worth of extra juice. And this name has moved about 60 cents since we ran these numbers as well. Is that merited? Is Roku setting up for a big move, listeners? I don't know. Oh, you know what? I can't get out of here without talking about this one. How could I not? Especially after what we did to start the show. WWE, they're on the 2nd as well. If you want an uncorrelated, just fantastic name to have in your portfolio for all of 2022, listeners, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better name than WWE. While the rest of the market has sold off and been extremely turbulent, everything, crypto, obviously rates, nothing's performed well this year. WWE has done nothing but rally. It's been just shedding everything. They got rid of the guy who pretty much created it and has been associated with it forever. They thought that would kill the stock. It didn't. It has rallied. They have revenue deals in place for years. There's talks of a buyout. So the stock has performed well. $78.72 when we ran these numbers. It wasn't that long ago, and they were talking about canceling WrestleMania, listeners, back in the early days of the pandemic. It was threatening to break the 30 hand. I was very close to selling the 30 puts, and I didn't because I thought, well, this stock could go to 10 if they cancel WrestleMania. That's what's left of this name. And then it's done nothing but rally literally almost ever since that day. So in hindsight, yes, I do regret not selling those puts. 359 is where the stock was, the straddle was when we ran these numbers. 362 is where it's been in the past. So that's kind of the story of WWE. I'm sorry, 445 is where the straddle was. In the past, it's been 505. And again, they're not expecting a lot of juice. Their revenue stream is pretty stable, which is interesting, but again, a weird one, not maybe one you'd expect to be doing so well in this environment where in-person events were hard to do and everything for a while, but it is knocking out of the park. I just scratched the surface, listeners. We didn't even get to CoinDesk or DoorDash. We've got Portillo's. I know one of the Meatball's favorites. I like it as well. We've got Moderna, tons of names still popping off. Again, they're all there for you. TheOptionsInsider.com. The Duck, Duke Energy, DraftKings, all there for you. Look at the season really quickly. The season is crushing it right now. We've averaged about 85% since the start of the pandemic, and right now we're hanging out at 134%. So it's just blowing the doors off. Every week so far this cycle has been green, as in more vol, more movement than was priced into the straddles. So crazy town out there, listeners, and we are still monitoring. Again, that's the earnings season report, and then we also give you the earnings trades report where we're monitoring 54 long straddles and 34 long calendars for your trading pleasure. It shows you how many weeks they have to go for each of these, when we enter them, when we exit them, when we do put them on, take them off. We give you all that data as well. So what prices there were, what the stock was when we put them on, when we take them off. So all that fun stuff available for you because we like it over there at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, I missed it. Let's do a quick top 10 out there today, listeners, because I got so into the earnings, I kind of got away from the top 10. Let's do it really quickly. We got a bit of a weird one out there again today. Cost you 212,000 contracts to break into the top 10 right now today. Listen, it gets you to NVIDIA, so chips active. Number 9, TLRY. Haven't seen this one out there in the top 10 forever. So cannabis back in the top 10. Let's see what's going on. They're up 47 cents. Wow. 13%. Popping quite a bit out there for TLRY. Number 7, we've got, number 8, AMC. Exactly 250,000 contracts on the tape for AMC. We've got number 7, AMD, 280,000 contracts. Number 6, we got GameStop. Man, this is like a report from 2021. Let's check, make sure. Yes, it is the right reports. 2021, rearing its ugly head here. GameStop, 312,000 contracts for number 6. Number 5, good old Pass Blue Ribbon, a.k.a. PBR, 345,000 contracts. Then we jump up again. Number 4. When's the last time we saw Apple at number 4, listeners? 746,000 contracts. Number 3. Yes, number 3 is Tesla, 831,000 contracts. Number 2 is Meta. So trumping them all, Meta, 840,000 contracts. And the big dog today, the Amazonians, 953,000 contracts. That gets us to our question of the week. Which of those you like better, Amazon or Meta? We'll get into that in a little bit. But now it is time for us listeners to unleash the beast, a.k.a. the Eye of Sauron. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners. We packed a lot of living into that first segment, but now it's time to get weird, time to get wild. The Meatball alluded to everyone's favorite, or perhaps least favorite. It's certainly been a very controversy-plagued name. This is NKLA, they of the electric truck and shady CEO infamy. I'll set the table for you really quickly. First, here's what has obviously been up to on the year. A year ago was trading for $12.50, hit their high for the year of $15.50 back in November of last year. That's been pretty much a straight shot down with a few exceptions. It rallied to about $11.33 in March. Outside of that, it's really been straight down. Hit its low for the year of $2.80 just about 10 days ago. And we profiled it recently, just on Friday, actually, on Options Oddities. I'll give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain here. We talked about a pretty sizable, 2 sizable bullish trades that went up on actually Thursday of last week, listeners. And then I want the Meatball to dive into what's going on today. But on Thursday last week, we saw someone diving into the weeklies. So when the stock was $3.19, they sold 30,000 of the NOV 3 puts for 20 cents. That in and of itself, obviously a pretty bearish trade. Obviously, they're getting a decent amount of juice. And also for the fact that they don't mind picking up the stock below, in this case, 280. But then we saw about a little over 2 hours later, someone came back in Same month, same expiration, same strike, but the calls this time, and bought 10,000 of the Nove 30 calls, and they paid 31 cents for those. So they could be unrelated paper. It's quite possible. Or it could be somebody just blasting away at a bunch of puts and putting some of that premium back to work later on the calls. But either way, two very bullish trades on the 3 strike. And lo and behold, the stock today, $3.64, up about 40 cents. Excuse me, or about a little over 12%. It is high as 374. So both those trades looking like bangers, at least so far. But Mr. Meatball, you said you came across some fun NKLA in your big money flow today as well. What came across your radar, sir?
Yeah, so a trader bought 50,000 calls expiring on Friday for 21 cents. They have worked. They're already almost 40 cents. But we had just a big call sweeper step in and say, you know what? This is going over 3.5. He bought 3.5 calls 50,000 times for 21 cents, expiring on Friday. NKLA has earnings on Thursday. So they're looking for a move like right now.
Yeah, so maybe the person who bought 10,000 for 31 cents on Thursday, he really loved him at 21 cents. So I got to get 50,000 more. What's 50,000 contracts amongst friends, right?
Exactly.
And then obviously already collecting some premium as well. So yeah, those puts are looking good. The calls are looking better. Yes, and intriguing stuff. It did seem also just the timing. Obviously, they have earnings coming up. They didn't want to go beyond that. So that's what weeklies were created for. And they're diving in to the weeklies expiring on the 4th, listeners. Have you folks been playing in Tesla? In NKLA? Have you been listening to oddities? Did you dive in after we were talking about them on the show last week? Intriguing stuff. You're right. I do recall as we were talking about NKLA, I do believe those calls were going up as well. So it was kind of a double whammy of NKLA fun there on Friday. But yes, all week long, NKLA was on someone's radar, listeners out there. And again, this one's been beset by all sorts of issues, regulatory fines, all kinds of stuff. But maybe the worm is turning out there. I haven't looked to see. Let me look really quick so I can see what is popping it. Is it an upgrade? Their founder was convicted of fraud 2 weeks ago. I don't think that's doing it. But something is popping this stock about 14% today, and it's certainly making that call buyer and the put sellers, if they are the same people, are making them pretty happy out there. Speaking of happy, let's see if we can find some happiness here in some of the trades we've profiled out here in the past. First, let's go back to the October 10th show, so not too far in the distant memory, to Fastenal Company, ticker symbol FAST, F-A-S-T. This one trading, I can tell you where it's trading, even though it is a bit of a spoiler, but it already expired, so I guess we're safe. Let's do the year first. A year ago, it was trading $56.78. Got up to its high for the year in December of about $64.75. And then it sold off hard right away in February to $49.62. We all know what happened. It hit its low on February 23rd. I wonder what could have happened around that time frame. And then it shot back up again. So apparently the invasion wasn't a long-term bearish impact for them. They rallied hard right afterward. In April 4th, back up to $60. Then they sold off again, back down to 46 3/4 on July 13th. Then they rallied again. August 18th, got up to about $56. And then they have sold off again. So it's a very volatile name out there as well. Hit their low recently back on October 14th of $43.73. That also coincided with a few days before we had talked about it on this show. We talked about it on October 10th. Someone coming in and loading up on some very near-term puts here in Fastenal. In the particular, they picked up 4,907 of the October 45 puts, lifted the offer. They paid $1.05 for these things. That was a 50 vol at the time. The stock was, I don't have where the stock was at the time, but we know it was, it sold off shortly thereafter. Let's see, August 10th, the stock closed at, where was it? $54.43. So they were not exactly close. I'm sorry, August 10th, looking at October 10th. Here we go. October 10th. That'll give me a better level. There we go. $46.17 was where the stock was. So they were still a buck and change away, and they were paying $1.05 for these. So they were putting some money where their mouth was. And they didn't have a lot of room to work, obviously, less than 2 weeks on these puts. And the stock sold off shortly after they did the trade. So it seemed like they had a moment. And again, I mentioned that was the low for the year right there, 43 3/4. So they paid $1.05. That gets you down to 43.95, right, listeners? And then they got to 43.73. So they were pretty close. They could have at least scratched these. And probably they sold off pretty quickly. So they probably could have made some money. Probably could have got them off for at least $2. And alas, they did not. The stock closed at $46.09 on expiration. And looks like paper ended up, instead of making money, maybe doubling their money, they ended up dropping a little over $500,000, about 515,000 contracts. Mr. Meatball, what say you? Yet another lesson, sir, to perhaps do something when you have the opportunity, sir.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why they don't. Even on a hedge, you can move it and take some money off the table. That's kind of the whole point. I don't understand why these guys fail to see that they've got an opportunity to take some money and they don't take it. I don't understand that. I don't get it. Maybe you can explain that to me at some point, Mark.
It would require many years of human psychology study, which, alas, I do not have time. I'm talking to you guys all the time. So, unfortunately, I cannot explain. That's one of the big mysteries of doing this show and all of our unusual activities. When people just don't do things. It's a mystery. We've seen it like last year. How many of those big call buys did we see, listeners, that actually worked out? Rare opportunities where buying crazy near-dated, super high vol calls actually paid off, and they did nothing, and the money went to nothing. It happened a ton. So, I mean, obviously, you could try to infer that they're scalping something on these. Maybe they had some gamma. Maybe they scalped the stock. That's a pretty charitable, I think, interpretation, and it's usually not the case. So, yeah, it's just a head scratcher, unfortunately. Let's go out to a little bit earlier, October 6th on the show, to Western Digital. You know, then they probably make a backup hard drive somewhere near you in your office right now. A ticker symbol WDC, trading right now $34.70, off about 80 cents, or about 2.3% today. So a rough day for them today. On the year, a year ago, it was trading about $54. Then they rallied to their high for the year in January. So not in November, but in January. So a little bit after the rest of the market. Almost $70, $69.33. And they sold off pretty hard right away. Yeah, about January 30th, they were below $50 again. By March 11th, they were down to about 44. And then they shot back up again. May 4th, they hit a second near-dated high, about $63. Hung out there till about June 8th. You know what happens to June 8th, listeners? All these names give up the ghost, and this one did. By July 1st, it was trading $43, and then by September 29th, it got down to its low for the year of $31.56. And it has since rallied. What we profiled came a little bit after that. On October 6th, we talked about it on the show. It was very near-dated. It was a near-dated one-day house money put roll. I mean, we talk about house money, listeners. I mean, someone's usually playing with a little bit of house money. They put on a trade. It worked out for them. Now they're putting that money, those profits, back to work on a second leg of the trade. In this case, it was the October 36 puts. We first noticed a put spread going up 7,500 times. It was the Oct 36-34 put spread going up for $2.05 on the bid for the 36 puts, and then buying the 34 puts for $1.21. And we looked at that and thought, that's interesting. It was opening on the 34s. Didn't seem like it was on the 36s. So we sent the Ive Sauron back to figure out what the heck was going on. And lo and behold, he had bought those 36 puts the day before for $1.09. So unlike our previous person, they bought puts, they made money within a day, and they did something about it. They sold them. But so they made $1 pretty much, close to it. But then they didn't just sit on their money. They came back and bought 7,500 of the 34 puts for $1.21. So they put their profits back to work. And then maybe they were thinking, well, you know, I sold these puts for $2.05. I bought these other puts for $1.21. Should I put all of it to work? Because they came back and bought 7,501 more. They went through the offer this time for 99 cents. These were, looks like about 20 minutes later. So probably very related paper, unless someone else was inspired by them. But it's the exact same size as well. They paid 99 cents for the second chunk. So they got these for 22 cents cheaper. So already they're doing a little bit better here. So I guess they thought these have fallen quite a bit. I should probably average down. Either way, they bought about 15,000 of these things for somewhere in the neighborhood of $1. And looks like the stock, where do we go out on the stock? Just had it here. I just had the closing print for the stock. All right, 1 second. Here we go. All right. The stock went out $34.86. So they got close. They got close, listeners. But alas, it was not enough to seal the deal. And so they dropped almost $1 million, 907,000 on the first chunk, and about $742,000 to be precise, on the second chunk. So you're talking somewhere in the ballpark of about 1.6 million, Mr. Meatball. So they made money, and then apparently they let it all go to die, sir.
At least they did something the first time, but that's, I guess, better than the last guy, but still not great. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, is it better to make money than lose it, or to never have made it at all? I don't know.
Exactly.
Is it better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all? I don't know. These are the deep philosophical questions that plague our time, listeners. Instead, we'll get out of here on this one, unless Mr. Meatball has another interesting big money flow that's come across his radar today that he's dying to share. But let's get to, what is this one? This is SLB. We talked about this on the show back on September 19th, listeners. This is everyone's favorite Schlumberger. And let's see. Trading $51.88 right now. And that's going to be important in a little bit. A year ago, it was trading $33. Obviously, oil field services, what's gone on in the oil industry. It's done all right for the better part of this year. It's had some hiccups, but for the most part, it's gone pretty much straight up. Went from $33 on November 1st to about $50 on, guess what day? Oh, yeah, June 8th. Funny how that works. Then it sold back off to, on July 14th, $31 again. And then it rallied up to its pretty much high for the year of $53.89. That was just, it's like about a week and change ago. And now they're hovering at $51.85. I bring that up because back on September 19th, we saw someone come in and just overwrite the hell out of these bad boys. Maybe. Let's see where we got. And then the second one went up for, because there are multiple prints on these. What time were these? These were 10:45. Okay, because they printed a big block of 38,492 for 30 cents, which was on the offer. So you might think, oh, they're lifting the offer. But there were other prints on the day, quite a few. 3,200 went up right before it, crushing the bid for 33 cents. And so it looks like paper was really selling these. They went up for 31 cents before that as well. So we saw a lot of sales on this strike. So someone looks like they were overriding the hell out of good old Schlumberger on the 46 strike, trying to harvest a little bit of the old risk premium. The stock was $38.70 at the time. So they were saying, hey, if I get another nearly $8 in the stock, I don't mind dumping this thing. It's a 46 vol. And they got their wish. The stock ended up closing at $50.41 on expiration. So you can view this a couple of ways, getting back to our psychological debates for earlier. We've always said on this show and on the network, if you sell the call and your stock gets called away, you should be happy. You won. And in this case, this person made nearly $8 more on the stock, plus a little bit of juice they got on the call. So that's a win. Of course, if you want to be a glass half empty, you could say, well, if you just hold on to the stock, you could have got all the way up to $50.50, or even right now, $51.84. So they left a little bit of money on the table. And yes, that is true. But they also, looks like they pocketed a fair amount as well. Mr. Meatball, how do you view this? Are you the glass half empty or the glass half full kind of guy?
I'm a glass half full guy, always. I mean, you've met me. I'm Mr. Positive. I think it's a glass half full. Let's go with that.
So you're celebrating with this guy. He should be laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh, 100%. Way to go, guy. Way to go. And Mark, I do have a trade for you if you want to discuss.
All right, let's do it. We got an Uncle Mike for strategy block today, so let's dive into some flow.
All right. This is a new NU. We talked about this one at the top of the show. Option volume is blowing up. And the big trade, there's a couple of them actually. We had a buyer of 10,000 of the November 5 calls for 40 cents. Those are already winning. And then here's the one that's really an eye catcher. Traders sold 25,000 tied to stock, sold 25,000 of the 4 puts at $1, bought 25,000 of the 5 calls for $1.70. This is a Jan 2024. So and the new trader, they came in and then swept after later in the day. Looks like another 10,000 for between up to 45 cents in those November calls. So I don't know what's new with you, but there is definitely some new interest in NU.
Everyone loves new. We talked about this before. I'm trying to remember if it's been on this show or on Oddities. This is Brazilian fintech, effectively, out here. Yeah, ticker symbol NU, listeners. And you're right, it is popping today, up 44 cents or nearly 10%. And somebody's loving it. A long-term bullish risk reversal. That's kind of interesting to me. I don't like doing those that far out. The call, sure. The selling the put, I get why you do it, though. They like to keep it all in one set it and forget it type package. I get it. But that's interesting. So, yeah, and the stock over the 5 handle today, listeners. So someone is loving themselves a little bit of Brazilian fintech, even though it was down just this morning. It was down in the pre-market, and then they've just rallied it ever since. So, man, you're right. A lot of love here for new. So, listeners, is New Holdings on your radar? We talked about it before. Again, it's a $5 name. It's got all the hallmarks of a lot of the fun stuff we used to talk about in the meme stock palooza of 2021. Cheap name, got some upside call action. Folks diving in on some pretty impressive vol levels out here. And so far, it's working. The stock is paying off for them. It's moved all the way up to the 5 handle and hanging out there right now. What about a long-term bullish risk reversal? Selling the 4 puts, buying the 5s in Jan of 2024. You like that, listeners? I'm curious. Send in your feedback. No Uncle Mike this week, so no block of strategy. We'll get a double dose from him on Thursday as we head right now into the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the mail block, the portion of the show where you folks take the reins with your questions and comments. We also turn the spotlight back on you with our question of the week. Let's pay off last week's first, then we'll dive into our hot and fresh one just launched right before the show for this week. Last week, we asked you, since the start of the pandemic, again, going back to what was a hot topic of this show as well, earnings season. Every earnings season has only delivered an average of about 85% of the movement that has been priced into their straddles at the start of the season. And if you go look at the earnings season reports, when we wrote this question last Monday, that was true. We updated it now with the most recent cycle. That has ticked up a little bit to about 92%. It's still underperformance, but not quite as dire as it has been since the start of the pandemic. But we thought we'd put it to you folks. You said, what is your outlook for this coming earnings season? You think their names are going to move somewhere in the 85 to 90% range? So pretty much the same as what we've been seeing. Or you think it's going to be north of 100%, so outperformance, so kind of an action-packed rock'em sock'em robot season? Or is it going to go the other way? Is it going to be, let's say, below 80%, so not a heck of a lot of movement, which in the long premium parlance is pretty darn boring, but I had someone point out, if you're selling a lot of premium, that's a great season. So maybe you can take issue with how we described it as pretty boring, but nonetheless, not a lot of stuff going on. And we had this was a weird poll. The numbers were all over the place, and we had a couple of ties, very specific ties during it, and then it ended on a very weird tie, which is also strange. Doesn't happen very often. We have 36.8% of you each chose 85 to 90%, so about the same. And then also 36.8% of you choosing north of 100%, so action-packed, rock'em sock'em robots. Those people have obviously been paying attention to this season's earnings report because it's a banger so far this cycle. And then 26.3% of you saying, can be pretty boring, at least so far. That is not the case. Let's go out to this week's question now, listeners. And it's kind of a fun, just picking your brain kind of question. We were talking about it jokingly. I forgot what show it was last week. Might have been Boot Camp. Maybe it was Volviews. I forgot. We do so many. And we were talking about, it looks like Amazon and Facebook have gotten down to about the same level. They were both at about $100 when we were talking about it, which leads to the question, which one would you rather buy right now? Right around $100. So we thought we'd put that to you this week. That is our question of the week. Both Meta and Amazon trading right around $100 right now. Simple question. Which one would you rather buy? Gave you 3 choices because we're nice. Amazon, Facebook, or neither. Mr. Meatball, first off, what are your thoughts on our audience with a weird tie choosing an either action-packed earnings season or about the same? Does that surprise you? And then B, What is your vote? What do you think our audience is voting for in our Amazon versus Facebook poll?
They're voting for Amazon, and I'm not surprised. I think that makes a lot of sense. Because we've started to see things really move around. We already got some big movers early on, so that would be that. And then I think the last season we started off with some big moves and then kind of petered out a little bit, and maybe that's where the other votes are coming from.
And you are correct with this week's poll. So far, it's only been live less than an hour, listeners, but so far, 67.7% of you, they're all in on Amazon, Mr. Meatball. They're loving themselves some Amazon. Facebook, only 19.4% and about 12.9% saying neither. You want none of it. I can't argue with the Amazon choice. One has done well, continues to maybe not doing as well now, but still has a lot of irons in the fire. Obviously, Facebook has struggled ever since, Apple made their changes to their privacy policies, and also now they're all in on this Meta thing. It could work or it could not, but either way, they're hemorrhaging a lot of cash on it right now. So I can certainly see why a lot of you folks out there are a wee bit skeptical, or at least I should say maybe more skeptical of Facebook than you are of Amazon, even if you are skeptical of both. It's certainly understandable if you're dubious of both right now as well, which is why we put neither over there. Make your voices heard over there, listeners, as the Meatball and I go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of the week until our next episode on Thursday. Mr. Meatball, I'm going to add an addendum. Give us an update. What are the hot costumes? What are the folks all going trick-or-treating as down there in the land of Tejas? If you have a costume, let us know. And then B, what are you keeping an eye on for the markets?
I this morning I went as my co-host or the host of our morning show that I do at Money Map. But currently I'm dressed as a convict, financial fraud. And then, I think something more important than what the costume are is the results of one very important contest that I believe everybody watches, and that is 13U flag football. And the fact that I believe Marcus Longo yet again has coached his son's flag football team to the highest level that can be achieved.
It is quite the streak of dominance. I will say so myself.
The whole thing. It's something that we live stream here in Texas. I could not tell you, Mark, how proud I am of you and your kin and the way you coach that team up. Way to go, Mark. It
was a fun weekend. Yes, we did coach them. It is our three-peat. We've won more, but these are our third consecutive Super Bowl victories. That was kind of fun. Yeah, the kids they're in the groove now. The kids are they're feeling it. So they're the ones to beat now out there, which is fun. And we're having fun out there. The kids are having a ball. It's just awesome. Yeah, so that thank you. It was not all smooth sailing. It started off kind of rough, but then they turned it up. They faced some adversity and they fought through it and they took home the trophy. So I was very proud of them this weekend. And in addition to my flag football victory, sir, what are you keeping an eye on out there in the markets this week?
We've got non-farm payrolls and the Fed. That's going to drive everything. And that is going to drive, I think, things for the whole week. I'll be very interested to see what the Fed has to say on Wednesday.
All right, everybody. That music means we've come to the end of an epic journey. What a journey it was. We did a lot of living here over the span of this last hour. Touched on many fun and interesting things, listeners. But before we go, let's go back to the land of the Meatball. Mr. Meatball, sir. Hey, you got to get your son out there in a little bit of the old flag football. Maybe you do. Maybe he's playing over there. I don't know. Down in the land of Texas. Football, I heard, kind of big in Texas. And then B, if folks want to check out the land of the pit and all your goodness, where should they go? What should they do?
Go to options.com and check us out. Give us a read and buy my book, Trading Options for Ed, 2nd edition by Mark Sebastian with L. Celeste Taylor. It is really, really good. It's worth your read. Go out and buy and read it.
Don't let the criminal costume fool you. He only pretends to be a criminal. Yes. No criminal shenanigans there behind the scenes. Check it out over there. Mark Sebastian, Sebastian, on Amazon if you are searching for that book. Or just go to optionpit.com. You can find all that goodness there. And, of course, he couldn't join us today, but we'll give him a plug nonetheless. He is the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tusaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. You know him, you love him. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go to get more of him, including his YouTube, his Twitter, and everything else. You find links to all that good stuff there. We got to get on out of here. Don't worry, listeners. If you want to unpack the mad world of crypto, we'll be back in about an hour to do that for all you live folks out there. All you on-demand folks, just wait patiently. It'll be hitting the network. Hit next. It'll be hanging out there waiting for you. And then back again tomorrow with a great pro Q&A session. You guys love those. Another one coming at you tomorrow. And then back again on Wednesday with Options Bootcamp and Options Playbook Radio. By the way, you have Steve Sosnick from Interactive Brokers in the hot seat this week for answer all your questions. And then Thursday, back again on Thursday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.